Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Today I'll be reading from the rays, so the fourth ray and the fifth degree of the luminous verse, for us God suffices. So Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Ala Rasulina salawat. Another time, when my life was being shaken by severe conditions, it turned my attention towards life, and I saw that mine was swiftly passing. So it turned his attention towards life, and he realized life is passing by quite quickly. I was approaching the end of my life. It had begun to be dimmed with the oppression I suffered. But I thought sorrowfully of how, because of its important duties and virtues and valuable benefits, which are explained in the treatise on the divine name of ever-living, life deserved to be very lengthy, not to be swiftly extinguished in that way. I once again had recourse to my master, the verse, for us God suffices and he is the best disposer of affairs. So Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Even when Ustad here is talking about how time is swiftly passing, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to us, we are like the travelers who rest in the shade for a while and then move on to continue the journey. So we are here for a brief moment. So it's an important reminder for us moving forward as well. Okay, so I once again had recourse to my master, the verse, for us God suffices and he is the best disposer of affairs. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. And it told me, consider life from the point of view of the ever-living and self-subsistent one who gives you life. So I considered it and I understood that if one aspect of life looks to me, 100 aspects look to the ever-living grantor of life. If one of its results concern me, 1,000 of its results pertain to my creator, to Allah. In that respect, it did not require great length. In fact, it needed no time at all. To live for an instant was sufficient. This truth is elucidated together with proofs in various parts of the Risale-i Nur, so here it will be explained in 4 matters in brief and summary form. So Ustad here is going to go into the 4 matters to explain this. Now, what I'll touch on with Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil as well is when Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire, he said Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. So he was putting all of his trust in Allah. He was saying for us God suffices and he's the best disposer of affairs. Even in Surah Ali Imran, it states in there, Allah Almighty said, those to whom hypocrites said, indeed the people have gathered against you, so fear them. But it merely increased them in faith. And they said, sufficient for us is Allah, and he is the best disposer of affairs. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. So no matter what adversity they faced, no matter what challenge they faced, they would always go back to Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. First matter. I looked in the manner, the essence and reality of life, looked to the ever-living and self-subsistent one, and I saw that in reality, my life was a collection of keys with which to open the treasuries of the divine names, and a small map of their inscriptions, an index of their manifestations, a sensitive balance and measure of the vast truths of the universe, and a word of wisdom written to know and make known, and to understand and make understood the meaningful names of the ever-living and self-subsistent one. When life's reality is this, its value increases 1,000-fold, and 1 hour of it gains the significance of a lifetime. In respect of its relation to the pre-eternal one, who has no time, life may not be considered with regard to its length or brevity. And brevity means shortness of time, and as we all know, with Allah there is no time. He is beyond the universe. So I think that was quite clear. So I'll move on to the second matter. I considered the true rights of life, and I understood that my life is a dominical missive. It invites my brothers, other intelligent creatures, to read itself. It is a place of study making known its Creator. It is also a manifesto proclaiming my Creator's perfections. Knowingly adorning itself in the priceless gifts and decorations bestowed on it by life's Creator, it displays them consciously, gratefully, and believingly to the peerless monarch in the daily parade. It comprehends, observes, and proclaims the thankful benedictions and glorifications of the Creator of innumerable living beings. And it makes known verbally and through the tongues of disposition and worship the beauties of the ever-living and self-subsistent one's dominicality. I understood with the knowledge of certainty that the elevated rights of life like these do not require lengthy time, and that they elevate life 1,000-fold and 100 times more valuable than the worldly rights of life. I exclaimed, "Glory be to God, belief is so valuable and living that it infuses with life everything it enters. It transforms the fleeting glimmer of transitory life into eternal life, dispelling the transience in it." So he's touched on it here around the worldly rights of life, and there is in Surah Ashura, it says, "So whatever you have been given is but a passing enjoyment for this worldly life, but that which is with Allah is better and more lasting for those who believe and put their trust in their Lord, in Allah." And when you think about it, what is this life without belief anyway? So what's the point in everything you're doing from working to your daily activities if you don't have that belief for a greater purpose? Third matter, I considered the innate duties of my life and its non-material benefits which look to my Creator, and I saw that it acts as a mirror to the Creator of life in 3 ways. So Ustad here is going to go into the 3 ways how we act as a mirror to the Creator of life, which is Allah. The first way, through its impotence, weakness, poverty, and need, my life acts as a mirror to the power, strength, wealth, and mercy of the Creator of life. Yes, just as the pleasure of food is known in proportion to the degree of hunger, and the degrees of light through the degrees of darkness, and the degrees of heat through the degrees of cold, in the same way, through the boundless impotence and poverty in my life, I understood the infinite power and mercy of my Creator, who answers my needs and wards off my innumerable enemies. I understood my duties of entreaty, supplication, worship, abasement, and seeking refuge with God, and I undertook these duties. The second way is acting as a mirror to the universal and comprehensive attributes and acts of my Creator through such meanings in my own life as partial knowledge, will, hearing, and sight. Yes, I understood through the many meanings in my life and my conscious acts like knowing, hearing, seeing, speaking, and wanting, like my size relative to the universe, but in far greater degree. My Creator's all-encompassing attributes such as knowledge, will, hearing, sight, power, and life, and His qualities such as love, anger, and compassion. Believing, I assented to them, and admitting this, I found another way leading to knowledge of God. The third way is acting as a mirror to the divine names, inscriptions, and manifestations of which are present in my life. Yes, as I beheld my own life and body, I saw hundreds of sorts of miraculous works, inscriptions, and arts, and observed moreover that I was being most compassionately nurtured. I understood therefore through the light of belief how extraordinarily generous, merciful, skillful, and gracious was the one who created me and gave me life. How wondrously powerful, and if one may say, so ingenious, provident, and efficient. I understood too what the innate duties and aims of creation and results of life consisted of, such as glorification, sanctification, praise, thanks, exaltation, affirming God's unity, and declaring His greatness and His praises. And I understood with the knowledge of certainty that the reason life is the most valuable creature in the universe, and why everything is subjugated to it, and the wisdom in everything have an innate passion for life. I understood that belief is the very life of life. SubhanAllah, he explains it extremely well. He's talked about how he's found multiple ways to knowledge of God, which only strengthens your belief. And belief is not restricted to a brief affirmation based on imitation. So belief has degrees and stages of development. I think he's mentioned it before. It's like a seed growing into a fully grown fruit-bearing tree. So while belief based on imitation can be refuted through doubt and questions raised by modern thought, belief based on argument and investigation has as many degrees and grades of manifestation as the number of divine names, which is absolutely brilliant. Fourth matter. In order to learn what the true pleasure and happiness of life consist of in this world, I again pondered over the verse, "For us God suffices, and He is the best disposer of affairs." So, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. I saw that the purest pleasure and most untarnished happiness in this life of mine lay in belief. That is to say, my certain belief that I was the creature, artifact, and totally owned slave of a compassionate sustainer who created me and gave me life, and was in His view and was being nurtured by Him, that I was all the time in need of Him, and that He was both my sustainer and my God, and was most kind and compassionate to me, was such a perfect, permanent, pain-free pleasure and happiness that is indescribable. I might just touch on that again. He's just talking about that indescribable feeling. So I'll just go back and reread that just so we capture, in essence, what he starts talking about here. So, I saw that the purest pleasure and most untarnished happiness in this life of mine lay in belief. So the most purest pleasure and the most untarnished happiness in this life is belief. That is to say, my certain belief that I was the creature, artifact, and totally owned slave of a compassionate sustainer who created me and gave me life, which we should be thankful for, and was in His view and was being nurtured by Him, that I was all the time in need of Him. So we are always in need of Allah, and that He was both my sustainer and my God, and was most kind and compassionate to me, was such a perfect, permanent, pain-free pleasure and happiness that it is indescribable. The way Ustad is explaining it here is just unbelievable. I understood from the verse just how appropriate is the saying, "All praise be to God for the bounty of belief." Thus, these four matters, that is, the reality, rights, duties, and pleasure of life, show that the more life looks to the eternally ever-living and self-subsistent one, and the more belief becomes the life and spirit of life, the more enduring it becomes, and the more enduring fruits it produces. Moreover, it becomes so elevated, it receives the manifestation of eternity, which is what we're all aiming for in the hereafter. It no longer looks to the length and brevity of life, no longer looks to the length and the shortness of this life. This I learnt from the verse, And in the name of all lives and living beings, and with that intention and idea, I declared, for us God suffices, and He is the best disposer of affairs. So Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. It just shows how important belief is. And once you understand through all of these ways and all of these matters how important belief is, you come to a conclusion where you understand how compassionate Allah is, and you get this feeling that nothing else can give you. So it's extremely important. And Said Nursi says creation's highest aim and the most sublime result is belief in Allah. The most exalted rank of humanity is knowledge of Allah. Put your trust in Him and look to please Him. And like the verse in the Quran says, and whoever relies upon Allah, then He is sufficient for him. It's very important. And so anytime we're going through anything, we should always look to saying Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, but understand why we're saying that, and say it with the belief that's required. I'll touch on a bit of the 6th degree as well before we finish up. The 6th degree of the luminous verse, for us God suffices. At a time, my old age was warning me of my own departure amid the events of the end of time, which in turn give warning of the end of the world and departure of all beings. My innate passionate love of beauty and fascination by perfection developed to an extraordinary degree, and I observed with extreme clarity and sorrow that death, transience, and non-existence were continuously causing the destruction of beings and their separation, and were pounding this beautiful world and its creatures, breaking them up and spoiling their beauty. So due to the sorrow of death, transience, and non-existence, it was breaking things up and spoiling the beauty within it. So seeking consolation, as that metaphorical love in my nature rebelled violently against this situation, I again had recourse to the verse. It told me, recite me and study my meaning carefully. So I entered the observatory of the light verse in Surah Al-Nur and trained that telescope of belief on the most distant levels of the verse, for us God suffices, and turned the microscope of the insight of belief at its most obscure mysteries. I saw that just as mirrors, shining objects, fragments of glass, and even bubbles reveal the various sorts of concealed beauty in the sunlight, and with their different capacities and their change and renewal, renew its beauties, and by reflecting and refracting the light, make known the hidden beauties of the sun and the 7 colors in its light. So, without cease, in order to act as mirrors to the sacred beauty of the all-beauteous one of glory, the Son of pre-eternity, the post-eternity, and to the everlasting beauties of His infinitely lovely, most beautiful names, and to renew their manifestation, these fine creatures, these lovely beings, these exquisite artifacts, come, then depart. As is explained in detail in the Risale-i Nur, supported by powerful proofs, all the shades of beauty that are to be observed on them are not theirs, but are the hints, signs, flashes, and manifestations of an eternal, sacred, and transcendent beauty which desires to be perpetually manifested and visible. So from here, Ustad will go into some of the proofs that allude to this quite briefly. But we'll finish up here. So it's important to remember Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, and how important belief is. So it's not just about saying something without understanding it. It's about understanding why we say Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil and why that holds true. And Ustad here, Said Nursi, is explaining that to us through the mirrors and different ways as to how we should strengthen our belief as a result when we think and contemplate. So I'll end it there, and remember to say Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Al-Fatiha.